A child went into the bathroom with their own mother, and 2 hours later, no one inside was the same. It wasn't an ordinary crime. It wasn't a simple outburst. It was a moment when faith, illness, and neglect by the state collided, and a 5-year-old girl paid the price. I'm Marcos Campos, and this case takes place in the heart of the Alagoas backlands, where the scorching sun punishes the red earth and the nights are marked by the distant song of crickets. And it's there that this story of domestic horror continues to haunt the minds of the residents of Maravilla. Cases like this defy any simple answer. Society doesn't know where to place the blame, on the person, on the illness, or on the system that failed before. Almost 4 years after the crime, the case of Josimari Gomes da Silva remains shrouded in legal and psychiatric uncertainties, like a ghost that refuses to be exorcised. Imagine an ordinary woman, a single mother, struggling against invisible demons in her mind, turning a routine act like bathing her daughter into a scene of carnage that would shock even the most hardened investigators. Brenda Caroline Pereira da Silva, a girl just 5 years old with curious eyes and a stolen future, became the center of this dark story. But let's reverse then the usual order of things. Instead of starting with the crime, let's begin in the present, where the court case hangs in eternal suspension, and go back layer by layer, unraveling the perspectives that collide like opposing winds in the agrest. And this nonlinear approach, let's say, reflects the very confusion of the case itself. A puzzle where psychiatric, religious, and social pieces don't fit together perfectly, leaving gaps that fuel theories and debates to this day. Leave a like, comment, even an emoji, and consider joining the channel. It helps me a lot, that's it. Announcements made, let's get to the facts. This video is a narrative reconstruction based on public information from the case, news reports from the time, and also documented accounts. Some descriptions reflect testimonies and reports cited in the case files. Currently, Josimari remains hospitalized in a psychiatric unit of the prison and hospital system of Alagoas, where the air smells of disinfectant and medication. Her days are governed by strict routines, group therapy sessions, controlled doses of antipsychotic medications according to medical protocols for severe disorders, and occasional visits from social workers. They record her progress, or lack thereof, according to recent medical reports. Accessible through public proceedings at the Alagoas Court of Justice, psychiatric evaluations indicate the presence of a severe mental disorder with psychotic symptoms such as hallucinations and delusions. And also episodes where she speaks in mixed languages, alternating between regional Portuguese, phrases in English learned from soap operas, and sounds that resemble ecclesiastical Latin. In psychiatric evaluations attached to the case, Josimari reports hearing voices that, according to her, told her to protect eyes fixed on emptiness, as if she were conversing with invisible entities. One of the psychiatric reports attached to the case recommends continued hospitalization, pointing out the risk to the patient herself and to others. But the criminal case, initiated in February 2021 by the Public Prosecutor's Office of Alagoas, remains suspended for the performance and completion of mental health examinations as provided by law, a bureaucratic phase that echoes like a sentence of eternal limbo. Members of the Public Prosecutor's Office, involved and heard throughout the process, highlight the deadlock between criminal punishment and non-imputability. It's a delicate balance between justice and compassion. If she is non-imputable, there is no punishment. If she is, she deserves life imprisonment for the cruelty. Going back then to 2023, 2 years after the crime, The case gained new life when an online petition launched by a children's rights non-governmental organization based in Recife gathered thousands of signatures. The campaign, titled Justice for the Children of the Sertão, highlighted not only the brutality of the act, but also the systemic failures. Because Josimari, who had been diagnosed with mental disorders since 2015, was not receiving regular care. Records cited in the case indicate that Josimari did receive care at public mental health services. But the appointments were irregular due to the lack of transportation and free medication. She stopped taking the medication because it made her sleepy, and without it, the episodes would come. This was explained by her mother, Maria Silva, in a recorded statement for the petition. Maria, now a 62-year-old widow living alone in the same house where the horror happened, describes Josimari as a loving but lost daughter. Maria's perspective is that of a divided mother, mourning her granddaughter and feeling pity for her daughter. "Brenda was my little sunshine," she said. "Josimari wasn't evil, she was ill, but how can you forgive? For Maria, it's a family tragedy. For activists, it's a symbol of state neglect in mental health care in the Brazilian Northeast, where access to psychiatrists is very scarce. Only one for every 100,000 inhabitants according to data from the Federal Council of Medicine." But before we go any further with this story, it's important to understand one thing. We're not talking about an isolated moment, Zenato, but about the final collapse of a mind that had been crying out for help, let's say, for several years. So, moving on to the heart of the mystery, let's dive into the fateful day of January 24, 2021, but through multiple lenses, as if we were reconstructing a mosaic that has been shattered. From the police's point of view, compiled in the investigation led by Detective Carlos Mendes, it was a typical Sunday in the Backlands, suffocating heat. Families gathered after the morning mass at São Sebastião Church. The Silva House, a simple brick building with an asbestos roof, housed 4 generations in apparent harmony. José Silva, Brenda's grandfather and Josimari's father, a 65-year-old man with hands calloused from years of planting corn and beans, was in the living room watching a soccer match. On the television, the sound was muffled by the hum of a table fan. His wife, Maria, was preparing lunch, feijão tropeiro with farofa, in the adjacent kitchen. Brenda, with her 5 years of innocence, was playing in the backyard with a rag doll. Wearing floral shorts and a white t-shirt, her curly hair loose in the wind, Josimari seemed calm that day. "Let's take a bath, little daughter, so you'll smell nice," she said, taking Brenda by the hand to the bathroom. At the back of the house, there was a 2x2 space with an electric shower, a cracked sink, and a wooden door that creaked when closed. From this point on, what happened stops making sense to any common logic. What you see is not anger, it's not hatred, it's behavior guided by delusions. What happened in the following 2 hours is the epicenter of a mystery, perhaps where perspectives violently collide with Josimari's point of view, taken from initial statements and psychiatric evaluations. It was a purification ritual. The voices said that the demon was inside her. Her eyes shone like fire. I had to save her. That's what Josimari reported to Detective Mendes hours after her arrest. Still with dried blood on her nails and clothes, she described a fit where she saw Brenda transformed, her tongue moving like a serpent, speaking lies. "I used the scissors to cut out the evil. The scissors, a common kitchen tool, became an instrument. First, repeated blows to the child's head, causing skull fractures, then precise mutilations, eyes removed with surgical cuts, tongue cut at the base and partially chewed, as confirmed by traces of saliva and teeth. During the autopsy, Josimari alternated between prayers in Portuguese, Our Father, Hail Mary, and phrases in mixed languages. Exorcizo-te mundi spiritus, which in Latin is equivalent to I exorcise you, unclean, impure spirit. Learned perhaps from movies or evangelical services she used to attend. For her, Brenda was still alive. In the end, a hallucination made her kneel and pray over the body in that inert state of her daughter. In contrast, the perspective of the grandparents, Jose and Maria, is one of gradual horror. Jose, in his testimony, describes the delay. First I heard laughter as if they were playing, then silence. I called, knocked on the door, nothing. He peeked through the keyhole, seeing red everywhere like spilled paint. He broke down the door with a kick, the sound echoing like thunder in that dry backcountry. The scene: Brenda on the floor, face disfigured, eyes empty like black wells, tongue hanging from a bloody stump, body marked by purple bruises and clenched fists. Josimari, kneeling, glassy-eyed, murmuring, "The demon is gone, she will wake up." Jose shouted for neighbors who called the police. "My granddaughter, why?" he repeated in shock while Maria fainted in the living room. His vision is of a mother turned into a monster by illness. Josimari was always strange, but she loved Brenda. The voices changed her for the family. That wasn't just the day Brenda died, it was also the day Josimari stopped being a daughter, mother, or sister and became an enigma, maybe a daughter that's hard to decipher. When the case reaches the court, then the question arises that still divides opinions today. What should be done when a brutal crime is committed by someone who might not understand their own reality? The preliminary investigation, which began at 4:30 p.m., turned the house into a crime scene. The police chief arrived with a team of forensic experts from the Alagoas Institute of Criminalistics, gloves, cameras, and collection kits. The bathroom was photographed in detail, with walls splattered with blood and arterial spray indicating pulses during the mutilations, scissors on the floor with Josimari's fingerprints, and fragments of tissue and bone scattered around. Samples were taken for analysis. DNA confirmed that the blood was Brenda's, with traces of Josimari's saliva on the tongue, which had been cut. No evidence of drugs or alcohol in Josimari, just a tormented mind. Neighbors were questioned. A nearby housewife heard moans that sounded like pain around 3 p.m., but thought it was just a fussy child. Another neighbor reported seeing Josimari talking to herself in the street days earlier, mentioning evil spirits. In his initial report, the police chief classified it as aggravated homicide for a trivial reason and cruel means, but indicated suspicion of insanity and possible legal irresponsibility. The autopsy on the small body painted an even darker picture. The skull was fractured in multiple places by blunt impacts, either from fists or from being slammed against the wall. Subdural hemorrhage caused by prolonged beating, estimated to have lasted 30 to 45 minutes. The eyes were removed after the initial death, but there was bleeding, suggesting that Brenda was still breathing weakly. Her tongue was cut while she was alive, with bite marks confirmed by dental impressions that matched Josimari. As I mentioned, the child suffered extreme agony. A psychiatric evaluation was recommended. For the accused, this medical perspective emphasizes the cruelty of the act, not an impulsive act, but a deliberate sequence, guided by delusions. Moving on then to the follow-up phase, Mendez, the detective, delved deeper into the lines of investigation. Unified Health System databases revealed Yosimari's history of hospitalizations in 2017 and 2019 due to episodes. Diagnoses of schizophrenia with religious components are common in the Northeast, where beliefs in possession mix with pathologies. Days of interrogations with family members. An uncle of Yosimari mentioned evangelical services where she participated in deliverance rituals, exorcism sessions with pastors laying hands on her. The local pastor, who was also interrogated, denied encouraging violence. He said, "We talk about love, not about scissors." And alternative theories emerged, suggesting the influence of rituals, but nothing concrete. That's quite true. In 2022, a supplementary report supposedly emerged where traces of non-prescribed medication were allegedly found in Yosimari. Hallucinogenic herbs used in spiritual teas, possibly worsening the episode, a hypothesis that was never conclusively proven. The community there in Maravilla City offers another perspective, especially for the residents. It's a case of real possession. In conversation circles in the central square, under the shade of a colonial church, they talk about demons in the backlands. Yosimari was taken over, it wasn't her. This cultural view contrasts with the police perspective. The police chief sees it as a non-supernatural illness, what Yosimari calls exorcism. The family sees it as madness, the community as a curse, and the experts as psychosis. In later stages of the process, the public prosecutor's office supported the advancement of the case, despite the pending reports. We cannot prolong the family's suffering forever, and this led to preliminary hearings where Yosimari, medicated, cried. "I didn't want to. The voices made me." In one of the last known procedural developments, the presiding judge decided to postpone the progress of the case, citing the need for a final report. The same report delayed due to lack of resources by an overburdened institution. In the end, no one won. Brenda lost her life, the family lost 2 people on the same day, and the state lost yet another chance to act before the tragedy. In its current outcome, the case is still in limbo. Yosimari, hospitalized without a defined sentence, the Silva family, fragmented, with Jose leading annual vigils on Brenda's birthday. Consequences: debates about mental health reform in the Northeast, with bills for mandatory monitoring of psychiatric patients. Theories persist: pure outbreak, extremist religious influence, family neglect of homogenized science, and then, from each point of view, enriches the enigma. Brenda, an innocent victim, is a fact, and now also a beacon for change, while Yosimari, a prisoner of her own mind, awaits a sentence that may never come. In the backlands where the drought hardens souls, this tragedy reminds us that the most terrifying monsters truly reside within ourselves. That's all for today. Thank you so much for your company. Please like, comment, even an emoji, and subscribe for more episodes. A kiss from the redhead. See you next time.